I'm Oren Wry, creator of Mundo Roto, and you're listening to the True North Country Comics podcast.
Welcome to a special edition of the True North Country Comics podcast, dedicated to promote Canadian comic book creators and supporters. It's June 1st, 2021. I'm John Swinimer. If you want to drop me a line, you can contact me at john@truenorthcountrycomics.com. These podcasts are published to celebrate the exhibitors of this year's virtual edition of the Toronto Comic Arts Festival. TCAF is an annual event gathering comic book creators from around the world to promote broad and diverse voices towards a betterment of the medium of comics through panels, keynote exclusives, and just basically enjoying the fun of comics. On this episode, I chat with Oren Wry about Mundo Roto and more at TCAF 2021. This podcast is available on Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts. It's also available on the True North Country Comics channel on YouTube. I invite you to like and subscribe. Oren is a comic artist and writer born and raised in Toronto. He describes his work as a chilling reminder of what early exposure to tacky 90s Spawn comics will do to an impressionable young mind, and deals with themes of social justice, corporate dystopia, and heavy metal for flavor. His published work includes Mundo Roto, an ongoing science fiction anthology series, and Mouldering in the Grave, a quarterly about the abolitionist John Brown, reanimated and fighting evil. And so without further ado, here's my chat with Oren Wry about Mundo Roto and more at TCAF 2021. So Oren Wry, thank you very much for taking time to chat with me.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
I appreciate your time. What I normally do to start off the interview is ask the creator about their first comic book. So I'm wondering if you remember, what was the first comic book that you read?
I do remember. As a product of the 90s, it was Spawn, a lot of Spawn books. I actually have the first printing of Spawn #1.
Wow.
Probably spent too much money on that one. But yeah, just a lot of terrible 90s, tacky comics, heavy shoulder pads, chains, and the like. And I've been dedicated to that kind of milieu ever since. So, a lot of Wolverine. But now I like to think I'm maturing into more indie works. But that doesn't relate to the question. Sorry.
No, but that's okay. That actually leads into my next question. Wondering who or what influences your work today? Is it still Todd Mcfarlane?
Yeah, well, because of my early artistic influence is like Todd McFarlane, Greg Caputo, and a lot of Warhammer art. I really struggled up until very recently drawing women, but because I've been able to diversify the artists I appreciate, to say Eduardo Rizzo, the Argentine artist behind 100 Bullets. Andy Bellinger, who did I Kill Shakespeare, or Kill Shakespeare, not I did it. And let's see, Kazuhiro Otomo, who did Akira and The Legend of Mother Sarah, is a book I'm really enjoying right now. So yeah, just as the importance of bricolage to just draw from a very large pool of influences in building your own style, I think is incredibly important. So I try to go from a fairly large pool into building my own style.
Very good. Good stuff. So we're here talking about the Toronto Comic Arts Festival. So with that in mind, I'm wondering if you have any favorite past convention or festival moments that you can share.
Yeah, so because I'm new to exhibiting at festivals, my favorite memory of a festival is when I went to as a participant, or a fan rather. My father was the one who actually bought the Spawn comics that I loved growing up. And as a petulant teenager, he asked me to go with him to a convention because that's something we'd shared a love for so long.
Sure.
And, in typical teenage fashion, I really sneered at him and, said it was for nerds and that I was far, far above it. I wizened with age, I like to think. And, very recently, only a couple of years ago, we actually went to the Toronto Comic Con together. And it was all water under the bridge. And as I thanked him, he was the dedication to my first comic. And He lets me eat crow whenever he gets the chance.
That's pretty cool. It's a nice memory to have, for sure, for sure.
Oh yeah,
So
he's a big reason why I do this.
very good. So with that in mind about TCAF, I'm wondering if you could talk a bit about what you exhibited at the show and maybe some of the origins of the project as well.
Yeah, I exhibited my science fiction anthology series, Mundo Roto, and a one-off, or maybe a quarterly if I find the time, Moldering in the Grave, which is about the radical abolitionist John Brown, reanimated and fighting for justice in the modern day. Mundo Roto itself actually originated out of TCAF, coincidentally. I went in to get my portfolio reviewed by a publisher in TCAF at 2018, and I had this large concept. It was going to be thousands of pages. It was going to do for the fantasy setting what the Watchmen did to superhero comics, if that doesn't sound too smug. It was going to reassess the genre of fantasy and cast it in a gritty light. And I went in there with a portfolio bag and hundreds of sheafs of paper. And this publisher, she was so kind, and she said, you might be biting off more than you can chew. And she said, why don't you try doing anthology series or little one-offs and build your way up to doing a magnum opus? And that took me about 2 years, and that was Mundo Roto. So that's where the Mundo Roto series originates from. And it's just your fun, dystopian, gritty science fiction.
Okay, cool. Very good. So I want to switch gears a wee bit and talk about the tools you use to create your art. I wonder if you could walk me through your workflow.
Yeah, so when I started making Mundo Roto, I switched from traditional art to digital and Clip Studio Paint, which is a pretty solid software. I'd recommend that. And, mostly because if I kept on with traditional art, I wouldn't have a non- and ink-stained shirt in my collection. I went through quite a few back when I was doing my my fantasy series, which I don't know if it will ever see the light of day, for better or worse.
Oh my. So do you do everything on a digital platform?
Work now is completely digital. I do everything in Clip Studio, save rough sketches when I'm still hashing out the story.
You're working completely in Clip Studio, or what? The finished product do you have to output to another program?
No, I just put it out to JPEGs and send it off to the publisher. That's mostly my artistic process. My written process is, even more Byzantine and indecipherable. I basically go one page at a time. Mundo Roto 3 is going to be a breakaway because it's going to be the first one where I have a script beforehand and I'm not just inventing it as I go along. So yeah, that's my process. Just digital pages on a hard drive and character concept sketches in a notebook.
Very good. So I have a funny feeling I know what advice you'd give to someone making their own comic book. Maybe start small, maybe do an anthology. But I'm wondering if you have any other advice to someone who might come up to you, let's say at a festival, to your table and say, "Hey, I want to make my own comic book. What should I do?"
Well, the advice that I would give right now is that ignore all barriers. Just go out and start. It's never too late. I only started doing this 2 years ago when I was fired and had the time to do it. So I think what's so beautiful about comics right now is that, we've really seized the means. It's a fully democratized indie comics. The bar is lower than ever. Just go out and start making it. Coincidentally, actually, an artist who I really appreciate their work but won't name because of what I'm about to say next, went online and posted to Instagram that they thought that people needed to stop making bad comics. And I couldn't disagree more. No matter who you are and what you want to make, comics needs you right now. It needs to be as diverse a field as possible, with as many creators, with as many authorial voices as possible. And make a bad comic. Make something for your friends. And if they're the only ones that read it, that's fine. Just make something that's true to you.
That's well said. Very good. Very good. So you talked about your books that you exhibited at TCAF. I'm wondering if you could talk about what's next for you. What do you have coming down the pipe?
I think one of my great strengths as an indie artist is that I basically get to make whatever I want. So Mundo Roto 3 is in the works. That's called Company Town. It's a science fiction version of the company towns that existed during the Depression. I also would like to do book 2 of Moldering the Grave. Like I said, it's a loose quarterly, maybe an annual. But I also have always wanted to branch out and do historical comics on figures like Nestor Makhno and Sholem Schwarzbard, who were Ukrainian revolutionaries around 1919. I really love the work of Jason Lutz in his Berlin series. It took him 22 years to make that, so if I can get it to like 21 or so, then maybe that'll be a feather in my cap. So yeah, historical comics is something I've really wanted to branch out and do, but just in the works now is Mundo 3, Moldering 2.
Very good, very good. Where do you recommend people go to purchase your books?
Yeah, the best place to go is my website, creatively named www.orenwry.com. That's ORENWRY. But you can always follow up and find my work on Instagram, where I go by Oren Wry Designs. And I would love to hear from you and, talk about anything and everything. Love to talk to people about my work.
Very good. Well, Oren, those are all the questions I have for you, but I'm wondering, is there something I didn't ask that you'd like to get across in this interview?
I think I have one kind of pithy anecdote that I didn't squeeze in that I thought would be fun.
Sure.
When I was doing the writing process, because my writing process is basically my good friend Corey Francis will send me an article about something he finds outrageous and say I should make a comic out of it, and that's worked so far for 2 comics. And then since it's science fiction and I like the kind of speculative aspect of that, I usually do a modicum of research, but sometimes I worry I'm not too smart a man because I was watching a YouTube video as my main source for the nutrition of the deep space cosmonauts in book 1. And Neil deGrasse Tyson told me that mice would be a great meat source because they breed prolifically and they're very low maintenance. And I actually got the opportunity to test that theory out with the astronaut Chris Hadfield when I met him briefly.
Oh.
And I ran the theory by him. Like I said, Chris, what do you think of Neil's suggestion that people would eat mice? And he said, and I still laugh, he said that why wouldn't they just bring chickens because they can produce eggs? And I just... that stuck with me. So if you read book 1, there's a scene where they eat mice, and I still feel guilty about it for not thinking that they should have brought chickens.
Thanks to Oren for the chat. You can discover more about Oren on Twitter at WRYOREN and online at orenwry.com. And thanks too for listening to the True North Country Comics podcast. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to and like this podcast on Apple Podcasts, and please leave a good rating. Please check out the TrueNorthCountryComics.com website and follow along on Twitter at TrueNorthComics. True North Country Comics is now on YouTube. Please like and subscribe to that video channel. Please send your feedback to John at TrueNorthCountryComics.com. Thanks again for listening, and come back soon for another episode. Bye for now. True North Country Comics podcast is copyright True North Country Comics, copyright 2021.